Hello there. Welcome into a Tuesday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening. And that app, which is free to download and free to use, is sponsored by the fine folks at Diversus Health, mental health, and well-being for all. It will be a veritable cornucopia of sports topics over the course of the program, and I'd love to get your thoughts at 719-247-1313. That number is good for calling or texting. Plenty of football reaction to last night's game and a reshuffling of the deck when it comes to the AFC playoff picture. But I'd like to start with the Denver Nuggets. And in all transparency, I meant to get to this yesterday, but the college football playoff fallout. And more on that. Notre Dame's still talking. Let you know what their AD said this morning. But I want to get to this yesterday because it was breaking, so forgive me that I'm not getting to it as the news is happening, but I think it's still pertinent. Something happened yesterday that has never happened in Jamal Murray's career. And Jamal Murray's been a good player, right? I don't think anyone would deny how good of a player Jamal Murray is. But the question is always, is he what he showed in the bubble, what he showed in 2023 when the Nuggets were making a title run, is he that? Can he be that more often? Or is he a playoff riser and not, in the way we would put it, he's not an all-star? What happened yesterday not only is significant because it's never happened in Jamal Murray's career, but it's also significant because it points to the possibility of the regular season version of Jamal Murray looking more like the playoff version of Jamal Murray. He's always going to be a playoff riser. That's just how he's built. But if the best comparison to Jamal Murray is Jimmy Butler, and I think that's a fair comparison. Jimmy Butler's been an all-star. Jimmy Butler's played at an elite level during an 82-game regular season. It's just that playoff Jimmy has a whole another mystique and aura around him. And that's always going to be the case with Jamal Murray. But can the regular season version of Jamal get closer to the playoff version, which should make him an all-star? Well, yesterday, for the first time in his career, it was deemed that no player in the Western Conference had a better week than Jamal Murray, as he was named Western Conference Player of the Week. What he did during the week averaged 30 points, 4.5 rebounds, and 7.5 assists. That's the numbers that he put up. And before, not that you're thinking this, but before anybody pokes holes in this, given who the Denver Nuggets faced over the past week, I go back to the idea that this has never happened. There have been stretches of Jamal Murray's career where he has been able to play the Charlotte Hornets. He's played them before and put up 24 in one quarter against them. So this is uncharted territory against Jamal Murray or for Jamal Murray. And I don't know that it matters a ton who he's played, because we're talking about something that he's never done before, no matter how this schedule stacks up. And this just is another benchmark in the season that Jamal Murray is having that I think is on a pace for Jamal Murray to end up an all-star. right? And it's not just one thing. It's not just, oh, he was recognized as the Western Conference Player of the Week, so therefore he's an all-star. We've had some weeks, I think Jeremy Lin was an Eastern Conference Player of the Week. Like, it's about the bigger picture with Jamal Murray. It's that what you and I have seen from him to begin this season has kind of culminated in a phenomenal week that has garnered well-deserved Western Conference Player of the Week honors. One of his teammates has certainly noticed not just what Jamal Murray has done this past week, but what he has done all season. Here is Cam Johnson, the new host of the very popular Old Man in the Three podcast.
He's just clicking on all cylinders right now. 50 points in Indiana, efficient outings in Atlanta and Charlotte. I think he was at 22, 24 points in the first quarter against Charlotte the other day on dang near 100% efficiency. So he's just taking what the defense gives him. You know, defense gives him a three, he takes it. Defense gives him a lane, he takes it to the basket, little floaters. And he's still, averaging high assist numbers to go with it. So what he's doing right now, I'd definitely say he's on pace for his first All-Star.
And I agree. And I've been saying this for weeks. And going back to the offseason, I said that it was necessary for Jamal Murray to play at an all-star level. The great what if of Jamal Murray's career, certainly to this point, maybe forevermore, will be the ACL. And because of how late in the season that was, how much it cost him. He was a player that was ascending to maybe an all-star level. Right? Coming off of the birth of Bubble Jamal, right? The very next season, the Nuggets and Jamal Murray ascending into or entered into title contention status. They were one of the teams that you were looking at and saying they are a viable title contender, and Jamal Murray is a reason why. And then that night in Golden State happened. And it not only cost him the rest of that season, it cost him the entirety of the next season. And given the trajectory that he was on and the Nuggets were on, who knows what title the Nuggets would be going for this year. They might have multiple titles at this point. Jamal Murray might have been an all-star already. So right now, that's kind of the what if with Jamal Murray. But along with that what if is also, as you well know, a little bit of criticism towards him. And it's not, the ACL injury is not one that I'm talking about. But it seems like everything since Jamal Murray hasn't really responded in the way that you or the Denver Nuggets would have liked to have seen. 2 straight off seasons, he has been challenged by the then head coach, whether it be Michael Malone or David Adelman, to take better care of his body, to prevent injuries, to respond better to injuries. So a lot of what ifs that we put out there are through no fault of the player. I think it's a little bit of that because of that particular injury, but everything since has his ascension been delayed. Getting back to where he was after the bubble, has that been delayed, and has that been his own fault? And I think that that's fair. Because I think it has. But there is no doubt that Jamal Murray has finally taken to heart the challenges that have been made to him by David Adelman, by Calvin Booth, by Michael Malone. And he has been in shape. He has battled. He's had some knocks. Like the game before, he put up 50 against Indiana. He had to leave the game because of an injury. But he came back the very next game and was prolific. So he has answered the bell throughout this season, coming into the year, during the year, and every little time that you go, okay, here we go with JamALL, whether it's a bad game, whether it's an injury. And like Cam Johnson just said, he is on an all-star pace. He is right now, if the all-star game were to start today, which is a phrase we very rarely utter. We usually talk about the playoffs, but let's use that for the all-star. If the all-star voting took place tomorrow, to me, and I think it's merely a coincidence that they all play a similar position. They're all guards. This year's all-star voting is positionless. But when I look at the viability of all-stars and who I think the fans will vote in and all that kind of stuff, I think ultimately it comes down to Jamal Murray, Devin Booker, Anthony Edwards, and Austin Reeves for 3 spots. That's ultimately where I think this goes. I think, to be fair, the most deserving is probably Austin Reeves because he's been tremendous. So if we're being real about it, it's probably more like Ant, Devin Booker, and Jamal Murray for 2 spots. And remember, this is the coaches and the players. It can be a popularity contest, but it's not the popularity contest that the fan voting is. The fans will probably put LeBron James in the All-Star game, which he is not deserving of being an All-Star. But he'll get in for obvious reasons. But I think ultimately, as long as Victor Wembanyama doesn't come back from this injury and get hurt again, there are some things that could change between now and then, obviously. But as of right now, I think it's Ant, Devin Booker, and Jamal Murray. 2 of them get a spot. 1 of them does not. And I think for many people, it would be unthinkable that Anthony Edwards is not an all-star, but I think you can make a case that he's the least deserving of those 3. I think you can make a case for any of them to be in and any of them to be out. But none of them would be left out because they were undeserving. If the all-star teams were expanded to 13 guys, we'd be good. Then there's no debate because there's not unlike the college football playoff, there's not a 14th guy that has a legitimate all-star argument in the West. There are 13 guys, only 12 of them will get spots. Or I should put it this way. Given the Kevin Durant's, LeBron James's, Steph Curry's of the world, who are going to be voted in regardless of whether they are deserving or not, outside of that, you're probably looking at 10 deserving all-star players. And Steph, I think, is an all-star. I think you make the case with KD. It's really LeBron. Not picking on LeBron, he's been hurt. But Jamal Murray is worthy of inclusion in that group. He is playing at an all-star level. He had a better than all-star week. And he accomplished something that he never has. There have been stretches where the Nuggets have played the Washington Wizards twice in a week, and Jamal Murray has not put up these kind of numbers. Jamal Murray has not been deemed to have the best week of any Western Conference player. This is significant. And it certainly underscores the fact that Jamal Murray is squarely in the all-star conversation. He is having the best start to a season in his career. And it is not at all a coincidence that because of that, the Denver Nuggets are off to their best start in franchise history. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on Jamal Murray being named Western Conference Player of the Week. Do you believe he is a deserving All-Star? Coming up next, one of the greatest villains in Broncos history is back in the National Football League, and we just might see one more matchup between this particular player and the Denver Broncos. It's the most wonderful time of the year, and we want to make it even better with $1,000 towards your winter wish list. You can use it for holiday shopping, travel, a Clark Griswold style holiday display for 2026, or to just treat yourself. You don't got to tell people that you won $1,000. To enter this national contest, go to extrasports1300.com for your chance to fulfill your winter wish list, sponsored by Level Up Falcon Weight Loss, Hormone Therapy, and IVs. Level up your health. We stream the show live every day on our social media platforms. And while you are there watching, you can drop a comment, as Jason has on Facebook. Says, NBA All-Star format is international versus USA this year. Reeves is American. Now, that is correct, Jason. And by the way, Jason, how are you feeling about your Bears? Took a little bit of a tumble with that loss. Just notice your avatar being the Chicago fans, and I figured that that's the team that you're most thinking about right now. You are correct. However, the way they are doing this year's All-Star voting, they're not doing it by USA versus the world. What they are doing is you're voting by conference. 12 best players in the West, or at least should be the 12 best players in the West. You vote on 12 players in the West, 12 players in the East, and then when those teams are decided, the NBA will move them to the team that they would most fit in with. So there is a chance that they will not have enough European or international players, which I doubt that will be the case because they can throw in Canada. But that's what they will do. And remember last year when they were doing the draft and it just became, one captain, I forget who was on what team. One team's the Rising Stars, one team's the International one. Like TNT rigged it to do that. But then they had to stretch. And I think we found out for the first time that Donovan Mitchell's mother I think she's Haitian. I never knew that. And it was brought up as a way to put Donovan Mitchell on what turned out to be the international team. We might have that happen again. You might hear of somebody's great-grandfather being from this European country, and therefore, like Austin Reeves. Austin Reeves' great-grandfather's from Scotland. Now he's on the international team. We might have something like that. But the way the voting works, the way the All-Stars are selected is by conference. The teams will be separated USA world. So, and I was under that misconception as well. I thought that they were going to go, all right, you're picking Team USA, you're picking Team World, you're not. And it makes sense, right, that they would do it this way, because what if in theory, they want the most deserving players. They want the players that the fans want, that the coaches and players deem to be worthy. And if you're doing it by USA and World, you may not get that. So they want the most deserving, quote unquote, because it is fan voting. They don't always go to the most deserving. But they want the most deserving All-Stars in the East and the West, and then they'll divvy out those teams. Appreciate you reaching out, Jason. And I open the invitation for you to do what Jason did. Comment on Facebook, boom, pull it right up on the stream. And then I will make a comment about your avatar, like I did with Jason's, wondering how he feels about his Bears. I can't believe, to change subjects, I can't believe this is happening with Phillip Rivers. I can't. And look, I know the Colts situation at quarterback. Everyone is hurt. Everyone is hurt. Which, shouldn't teams come up with like a designated survivor thing? Like one quarterback is not going to practice. One quarterback is going to just simply stand on the sideline. So if all of our other quarterbacks get hurt, at least we have one healthy on the roster. Everybody on the Colts is hurt. Daniel Jones pops his Achilles when he was already dealing with a broken leg. Anthony Richardson has a problem with his orbital bone, his eye. Riley Leonard, who might end up starting this week for the Colts, has a bad knee. And I understand that there aren't a lot of great options on the street. There are not a lot of talented quarterbacks walking the streets of the United States of America. I still, with all that being said, cannot believe Phillip Rivers at 44 years old is coming back to the NFL. But that is what is going to happen. And there's a better chance than not that he's going to play. Now, I'm not going to sit here and theorize how much Phillip Rivers has left. I think Albert Breer this morning on the Dan Patrick Show did a tremendous job of kind of laying out the situation. It's not about the arm. Phillip Rivers can still throw. But can he maneuver in an NFL pocket? Because we know Phillip Rivers was never one to get out and run. So can he still move around in an NFL pocket at his age? And how is the timing aspect of playing the quarterback position? So I got to tell you, I have a lot of questions and I have a high level of skepticism that this is going to work. But I kind of want it to. And I know I'm speaking to a part of the country that say what you will about how Broncos fans feel about Mahomes. Be honest. Be really honest with yourself and tell me that you have a higher level of sports hate for Mahomes than you did Phillip Rivers. With the complaining constantly, right? Remember that Monday night where, I think it was a Monday night, where the scoreboard operator was making fun of Phillip Rivers with some graphics and Peyton Manning had to chastise them. Remember that game? Think back to how much Broncos fans hated Phillip Rivers. So maybe you're not going to agree with me on this. But in the year of the 40-somethings, right? LeBron, Joe Flacco, Alexander Ovechkin, Sidney Crosby, the guys that are either cross the threshold into 40 or are approaching 40. It's been a pretty good sports year. But this is pushing it with a guy that's 44 years old. But I not that I approve of the Colts or I want the Colts to do great. I kind of want this to work. I kind of want to see Phillip Rivers come out of retirement after 5 years and win games. At the very least, I want to see him on the field. Part of me does fear for his safety, but the bigger part of me says I gotta see this. So I don't know that I've really. I mean, this is a gauntlet that the Colts face. They face both Jacksonville and Houston, two divisional opponents, and they have Seattle and they have San Francisco. I would be floored if Phillip Rivers was under center for Indy this weekend. But those are the 4 games left for the Colts. I don't see a lot of wins. But I would like to. And I hope we see it. And I hope win or lose, I hope Phillip Rivers does well. Because there is a level of bravery here with Phillip Rivers. This long removed from his NFL career and at his age, like, I don't know that I'm brave enough to step out there on an NFL field. I'm 4 years younger than Phillip Rivers, and I marvel at Joe Flacco going back out there. Because I don't have a 40-year-old athlete's body, but I have a 40-year-old's body, and I can empathize on a certain level. I can understand what's going on with these people. But this all begs the question. I don't think there's really a conversation of why the Colts would do this. They have no other choice. Wait, what are the Colts supposed to do? Just phone it in? We're past the trade deadline. What are they supposed to do? They're in a virtual tie for the 7th seed in the AFC. The Colts just supposed to say, okay, and to say nothing of the fact that they were rolling at the beginning of the year. They were the story in the National Football League. They went all in at the deadline and gave up premium draft capital to get Sauce Gardner, who's hurt, by the way. Like, the Colts are all in. So I'm not trying to convince anybody that this is going to be a smashing success, but you have to understand where the Colts are coming from. They pushed all the chips to the middle. They got to do something. And there's a bunch of bad ideas out there, and they deemed that Phillip Rivers was the best of the bad ideas. So the Colts' motivation in all of this, I don't question. I don't. They have to do something. They cannot let this season they can't just phone it in and say, we're done here. There's too much that has happened. I think the better question is, why is Phillip Rivers doing this? What is his motivation? He was ready to be voted for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. His waiting period was over. He was up next to be judged by the Pro Football Writers Association of America. And I can't get that part of it out of my head, because part of me thinks that this is Hall of Fame related. I know Phillip Rivers loves the game of football. He's coaching his sons down in Alabama and all this kind of stuff. I know the love of the game is a given. You're going to come back at 44 years old. You love this game. That can't be all. That can't be all while you're satisfying or scratching that itch for football by coaching your kids. It can't just be because you love playing the quarterback position, because there are certainly some risks that come along with this. I think this is Hall of Fame related. At least in some part, right? Phillip Rivers right now, let's look at those 3 quarterbacks in that draft, okay, that we most think of. Eli, you know where I stand, but he's going to get in the Hall of Fame. Okay? To me, Ben Roethlisberger is the obvious one. He is a deserving Hall of Famer. There's no question for me that Ben Roethlisberger is a Hall of Fame quarterback. Eli, I don't believe is a Hall of Famer. But I think Eli has a better Hall of Fame case than Phillip Rivers. So could any of this, I'll pose the question to you, Could any of this be Phillip Rivers seeing the discussion around Eli and in his head going, well, if Eli's not getting in, or if Eli is being delayed getting in, I may not be getting in. Because sure, as a regular season quarterback, I was far superior to Eli Manning, but I didn't go toe-to-toe with a Patriot dynasty and win twice. I think Phillip Rivers, some part of him is saying, if I come back at this age and I get the Colts to the playoffs, I'm in. And I don't think that is a gross miscalculation. If he's able to do this, it's one of the more remarkable stories in recent NFL history. And you tack that on to an already prolific passing career, right? There's no doubt that look at the numbers of Phillip Rivers. Okay, there's a Hall of Fame statistical case to be made for Phillip Rivers. The problem is he's not associated with winning. If the last act of his football career, this new last act that no one ever thought we would get from Phillip Rivers, resulted in him saving a franchise's season, I'm not even saying he has to lead the Colts to the Super Bowl. I mean, you can't get to the Super Bowl unless you're in the tournament. I'm not even putting it there. I'm just saying we are all leaving the Colts for dead right now. If Phillip Rivers comes back and resuscitates them and leads them into the postseason, that is the best piece of winning that Phillip Rivers has ever done. On top of some Hall of Fame worthy passing numbers. I'm not saying it guarantees that he's in. I'm just saying the calculation of this might put me over the top, I don't think is completely unfounded. I think there are voters who are on the fence about Phillip, and he comes back and he saves the Colts season, and they go, all right, he's in now. Will that be enough to put him in? I don't know. But I can't get into their minds because I vehemently disagree with anybody who says that Eli Manning is a Hall of Fame quarterback. So I'm not plugged into their thought process. But I got to imagine that's a big group of voters. I got to imagine at least a few of them are going to go, all right, I was on the fence. The guy came back at 44 years old and saved the Colts season. Who knows what that ends up meaning? Saving them so they could be one and done in the playoffs, saving them so they could go to the AFC Championship, saving them so they go to the Super Bowl. But saving the Colts season as his final act at that age, after that long away. You talk about Hall of Fame being a museum and telling the story of how can you tell the story of the NFL without telling the story of 44-year-old Phillip Rivers coming back after 5 years and saving the Colts season? At least there will be a few people who will make that case. For now, I'm fascinated. I am fascinated by this. I can't wait to see him back out on the football field. I'm not a huge fan of Phillip Rivers either. Remember, he was in the division of my team too. Take your thoughts on the Rivers comeback, 719-247-1313. This week's nominees for our Extra Sports Athlete of the Week are available for your vote. The voting is already underway. Dylan Orocho of Harrison, Cole Harris of Palmer Ridge, Conley, Poles Grove of Pine Creek, and Sammy Nickel of Peyton. To find out what they did to deserve a nomination and to cast your vote, go to extrasports1300.com and we'll reveal the winner on Friday. It's our Extra Sports Athlete of the Week, sponsored by Blackjack Pizza and Salads. Phillip Rivers coming back at 44 years old. Is any part of this about the Hall of Fame? Any part of this? Just had a great conversation with somebody off the air that called in. He doesn't think it has anything to do with that. He thinks this is just somebody getting an opportunity to do something that he loves one more time. And that might be, I think, where maybe there's a compromise is maybe that is the biggest driving factor. I think I can acknowledge that Phillip Rivers, who he is, watching him for the entirety of his career, having him not only play the team that I root for twice a year for more than a decade, but playing the team that I cover on a daily basis multiple times a year, I feel like I got a good sense. I don't know Phillip Rivers personally, but I think I have a good sense of who he is. I do think that his love of playing quarterback and his belief in self is what is driving him more than anything else. I think there is some part of his brain that is saying, because wanting the Hall of Fame is not a negative. I don't begrudge anyone for campaigning to be in the Hall of Fame, doing, being in the media to try and get into the Hall of Fame. I don't begrudge anybody. That is an honor that I think is worth campaigning for, is worth trying to do things to make it. It should be a goal. It's okay to want that. I'm not criticizing Phillip Rivers at all. But when you're on the doorstep of your name being up for the vote, I got to imagine you start thinking about whether you're going to get in and where you land on that, whether you think you are or you aren't, especially if you don't think that you're going to ultimately get in. I got to imagine you start going through your head of what more could I have done? And here comes an opportunity to save a team season, to play in the postseason one more time, and who knows beyond that, right? Who knows? We talk about this season being so chaotic and so upside down. Can we really 100% rule out Indianapolis with Phillip Rivers as their quarterback? I wouldn't bet on him. They wouldn't be my pick. But in the chaos that this season has brought forth, why not? Why not? I think some part of Phillip Rivers says, hey, I want to do it because I love it. I want to do it because it's an organization that treated me well when I had my second act after I left the Chargers. But some part of his calculation maybe it could push him across the finish line as a Hall of Famer. Couple texts coming in that I think is the right question to ask based on what I just presented. from the 719, do you think it's more likely that Phillip Rivers comes back and tarnishes or damages his chances even more, kind of like Russell Wilson? I'm going to say no. I think this is only upside for Phillip Rivers in terms of his Hall of Fame candidacy, because this is so found money. This is so not. I don't think anyone can look at other Hall of Fame voters with a straight face and say, I was going to vote for him and now I'm not, because remember when he came back after 5 years at 44 years old and couldn't get the Colts into the playoffs? I don't think so. I don't think this can do anything other than help him. I think the question is, will it be enough to help him? It may not have any impact on his Hall of Fame candidacy. But I think your choices are it helps or it does nothing. I don't think anyone could say, I was on the fence about Phillip Rivers, but man, then he came back at 44 years old after 5 years off, really ruined it for me. I don't think so. I think this is only can be upside for Phillip Rivers. This from the 709 with Phillip Rivers. I think maybe he didn't go out on his terms, and maybe that's what he's trying to do if he didn't have closure from the game. I think that is I think that could be part of it too. But what does that mean? Right? Did he not go out on his own terms because of health? Because of winning? Because those two things play into one another. Let's say it's Phillip Rivers saying, I never got the chance to win big. Right? I never got to a Super Bowl, never won a Super Bowl. As unlikely as this would be, it is one more bite at that apple. And couldn't that tie in with my Hall of Fame thing? Could they go? I think they could go hand in hand. Again, I'm not saying the Hall of Fame is consuming him, and this is the only reason he's doing it. I can't imagine a guy that is on the cusp of being voted on is not thinking about his Hall of Fame candidacy. Or maybe if you do believe there is downside, do you think part of Phillip Rivers is calculating that? If he thinks he's in, do you think that I just can't imagine that his candidacy is nowhere on his mind whatsoever. This from the 571. I was waiting for somebody to bring up something like this, and you get credit for it. First one in, and this is good. He also gets a break from his kids and all those kids he coaches for a little while. Phillip Rivers has a lot of children, if you did not know that. And he has grandchildren. Every tweet about Phillip Rivers should start with grandfather. Grandfather Phillip Rivers. I don't care how young he was when he had kids. I don't care how young his kids are when they had kids. The fact of the matter is he is a grandfather. And he's playing in the NFL. That's amazing. Nothing about this story is bad. This is all awesome. The only thing that you hope is that it doesn't end badly. And there's a little bit of risk of that. At 44 years old, 5 years away from the game. Old man Rivers. I think it would apply. Now, I wouldn't want to be called old man at 44 because I'm only 4 years away from that. And that would mean I'm circling old age. But in football parlance, yeah, old man Rivers. 719-247-1313. Got to take a break. More Drive Time Sports after this. Welcome in hour 2 on this Tuesday. Great to have you. Appreciate you consuming the show however you may be doing it, including but not limited to watching the show on YouTube or any of your other favorite social media platforms at XTRA Sports 1300. If you follow me on said platforms like X at Gingerly Tweets, on Instagram at Gingewatch. I stream the show there as well. And perhaps even more platforms coming in the next calendar year. It's a tease. While you're on social media, you can like, subscribe, follow, and most importantly, drop a comment, be a part of the show. Highly encourage you to do so, although there are still the regular means of doing it, which is calling or texting in at 719-247-1313. I don't know that there is a whole lot to say regarding last night's Monday night game, other than to say that it was one of the uglier football games that I can recall. And I don't know that I come away believing in either the Chargers or the Eagles as a viable contender to do any sort of damage if they are fortunate enough to make the postseason. And at this juncture, both are a little bit up in the air. I think certainly because they lost, the Eagles are maybe a little bit more panicked because they still have, even though the Cowboys, this run of, here come the Cowboys was ended by the Lions, and then the Eagles breathed life back into Dallas. And that's going to be fascinating to watch down the stretch. That NFC East battle. Chargers certainly helped themselves out. It's not a foregone conclusion that they will make the postseason. But you don't have to feel great about their performance last night, but you can feel pretty good about their playoff chances. Because the one team right now in the AFC that is not in the playoffs as of right now that I don't close the door on, and maybe it's because I just don't want to, is the now Phillip Rivers-led Colts. But every team below that is done. And I told you a week ago that the Kansas City Chiefs were done. I didn't need to have that Texans game happen to tell you what everyone else is telling you today. The Chiefs were done after they did that little two-step between the Broncos and the Cowboys and lost both of them. That's when I pronounced the season dead. They just threw another shovel full of dirt on the Chiefs season Sunday night with the Houston Texans. With the Chargers winning, which I always thought was the path over the last few weeks for the Chiefs to get in. They still had the Chargers on their schedule. So they had some control over their destiny, not complete control over it. But if they took care of business against the Chargers, they could be like a game back, and then you just wait and see if the Chargers stumbled. The one thing that was always going to bite the Chiefs was the fact that the Chargers are right now a perfect 4-0, and that would be the tiebreaker. So maybe the Chiefs would have to beat them outright. But with that game still to come between the Chargers and the Chiefs at Arrowhead 2-3 weeks ago, I told you that was their path. That path is now closed. 11% chance for the Kansas City Chiefs to make the playoffs. And as you might imagine, I have been reflecting a lot on this. And given the personnel that the Chiefs have, like they didn't lose Mahomes for the season. Mahomes didn't bolt for Tampa because he couldn't stand working with Andy Reid anymore. Okay, they have Kelsey, they have Jones, they have Mahomes, they have all these guys. The idea of this being possible, unthinkable just a few weeks ago, even. But the Houston game really put things into focus and perspective for me. The reason why the Kansas City Chiefs are not going to make the playoffs and their reign atop the AFC West is over. And for all intents and purposes, their dynasty being over. I could see here's the light at the end of the tunnel if you're a Chiefs fan. They could be like the Warriors, where there's still, I don't think that the Chiefs, are suddenly sink to the bottom of the AFC West. I don't expect them to next year miss out on the playoffs again, but it'd be like the Warriors, where there will be a few years removed and then they'll pop up potentially with another one because they still have Patrick Mahomes. But it will be like this weird extension of their dynasty, but not really a part of it because so much time has passed. And some of the names will change. So I'm not closing the door on the Chiefs ever winning another Super Bowl, Mahomes winning another Super Bowl. But let's say the dynasty is at least on pause for right now. The reason why this is happening is hubris. That's the reason why this is happening. And I'll give you one example that makes my point from that Sunday game. Chiefs had scored 10 points to this juncture in the game against arguably the best defense in the National Football League. They had a fourth down and not one. They had a fourth down and closer to two in the fourth quarter on their own side of the field, and Andy Reid decided to go for it. That, my friends, is hubris. That is believing that the Chiefs of old still exist. That all they were was one fourth down conversion away from getting it all back. They convert, they go down, score, win the game, they save their season, onward and upward. Kansas City continues the dynasty, right? You may not believe that, but I got to believe some part of the collective brain of the Kansas City Chiefs believe that. But that's hubris. They're not a team that should be going for that particular fourth down against that opponent in that moment. And believing that it could work, believing that your team was capable of converting that fourth down, to me, is hubris. But that extends beyond what happened on that fourth down that basically gave the Houston Texans the game, if you even believe they weren't going to win anyway, which there was certainly a case that Houston was going to win that game. But that was the moment where it's like, this is Houston's game now. The hubris of Brett Veach, the general manager of the Chiefs, to say, as long as I have Mahomes, I can do the very bare minimum on that side of the football. And I'll just build up this defense. I don't need to do anything to the offense, and we'll be fine. And what you are seeing, even as great as Patrick Mahomes is, he cannot do it alone. When we talk about these Josh Allen, Lamar, Patrick Mahomes, even dating back to Montana, Elway, Brady, you name it, none of these guys can do it by themselves. John Elway never won a Super Bowl without the run game of Shanahan. And that's not to detract from who John Elway is. That's just the reality of when you are in the NFL is the ultimate team sport. And to think that any quarterback, even one that might be as talented as anybody who has ever picked up a football, can do it by himself is just flat out wrong. And what I see and what I have seen is a team that is putting it all on Mahomes to do it by himself. They just gave Joe Thuney to the Bears this offseason. Just gave him to him. No problem. We'll be fine. We have Mahomes. It's not working. Travis Kelce, clearly that Super Bowl threw a wrench in his plans. I firmly believe that if the Chiefs beat the Eagles, Travis Kelce walks away. And because he didn't want to go out like that, he came back and he's going out worse than he would have by losing that Super Bowl. His career is ending worse than that would have been. He would have walked away. Chris Jones might have been gone. Chiefs get the three-peat. Chris Jones goes away. Travis Kelce retires. Expectations go down. We say, okay, they completed the three-peat. Now it's time to retool. And there wouldn't be this conversation about how terribly the Chiefs are doing compared to expectation. And they could retool and figure out a way to take, kind of a gap year, if you will, and then come back better the next. But they had to hang on because of the way that Super Bowl went. But Patrick Mahomes has no help. And the last person that I expected to be of no help to him was Andy Reid. And that was an unconscionable decision to go for that fourth down. Yes, there are players who are aging and are not at the height of their powers, like number 87, like number 92. 92. 95? Chris Jones. We're on a name basis, Chris and I. Yes, there are players that aren't as good as they once were. But the problem is that the Chiefs still believe that they were. And some of the decisions that have been made in games have been awful. And part of the reason why the Chiefs have completely flipped from being the team that was unbeatable in one-score games to being one of the worst. And I know that wasn't a one-score. It essentially was a one-score game. Right? They go for it on that second fourth down. It puts the Texans in field goal range. They kick a field goal. I get that. That's a one-score football game. And the Chiefs made awful decisions in it. That's why this season is going the way it is. Because it is a team that believed that they were just one moment away from getting it all back. So, and now they'll be forced unceremoniously into this retool. Travis Kelce will retire in a worse way than going out after that Super Bowl would have been. Chris Jones will probably no longer be a member of the Kansas City Chiefs. They will have to invest heavily in their offensive line. And we're maybe talking about 2 years away from talking about the Chiefs as a real Super Bowl contender. And it's not to say that they can never get back there, because they do have number 15. But it would have taken them less time than if it just would have went the way they expected it to, beating the Eagles in the Super Bowl and some of their key pieces saying, all right, it's time for me to move on, and gets the Chiefs out of cap hell and allows them to make some of the necessary readjustments to their roster to build it back up. Now it kind of feels like they're a year behind in trying to maintain whatever we're going to call this moving forward is. Hubris. That's what ultimately at least put the Chiefs dynasty on pause. Take your thoughts, 719-247-1313. The flip side of that. How seriously do we have to take the Houston Texans in the AFC vis-a-vis the Denver Broncos in a potential matchup, which there could be, and I'll tell you how, next here on Extra Sports 1300. So I remember, I think it was a week or two ago, I was ranking my confidence level in the AFC playoff teams. And since then, we've had a couple of playoff teams come in and obviously a couple go out, as the Steelers and the Texans are in the playoffs. Colts, Ravens are out. And I don't know that I would just, to put everything through the Broncos lens, I certainly would not have more faith or confidence in the Pittsburgh Steelers than I would the Denver Broncos. In fact, my confidence rankings would largely be unchanged. Right? I still think that if the playoffs started today, I would back the Buffalo Bills. I think the next team would be New England. But I did say that the separation between New England at 2 and Denver at 3 was very thin. And the fact that the Broncos would, if the season ended today, welcome New England to Denver, I think that that's enough to flip-flop those two. I think neutral site or in Foxborough, I would take the Patriots. In Denver, I think because of how big of a home field advantage that is, I think that might tip the scales, even if I think that New England is all in all a better football team than the Denver Broncos. Those three are unchanged, despite some of the shifting that has gone on. The team I find fascinating, though, is Houston and where they are in all of this. And perhaps the Jaguars have only themselves to blame, because for their entire history, they have been the Jacksonville Jaguars. That I will, even though I thought that the Jags would be a better team there, that they would bounce back, that they would be in, I thought they would be in the playoff conversation, because I didn't think a whole lot of their division more than anything else. I will look actively for other teams to back over the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm sorry. That's just the way I feel about them. And I'm looking at the Houston Texans, and I'd say I would have more confidence in Houston than I would Jacksonville if the playoffs started today. I look forward to hearing from a Jacksonville Jaguar fan telling me I am disrespectful to them, because maybe I am being a bit disrespectful. That's fine. But it's how I feel. I had the Colts above Jacksonville. I thought that the Colts' fatal flaw before the injury to Daniel Jones would be playing outdoors. And now I think their flaw is they have a 44-year-old quarterback. And they will probably have to go outside. But this Houston team is quickly becoming one of the more fascinating teams in the NFL. Now, we've seen these two teams play with one big caveat. Houston lost C.J. Stroud during that game and played most of it with Davis Mills. But I told you on Monday after that game, I thought that even if C.J. Stroud finished that game, the Broncos were going to win. Because of, just to sum it up, those are the games that the Broncos win all the time. Now, they just keep winning these kind of games. But you look at the schedule and that was a while ago now. This Houston team does have C.J. Stroud back. But one piece, and it's not the be-all, end-all, but one piece to the puzzle, I think, is Jaden Higgins, their rookie wide receiver out of Iowa State. He's kind of starting to pop a little bit. He had one catch for 4 yards against the Denver Broncos. And since then, he has not had prolific games. Nico Collins, make no mistake about it, is still their number one receiver. But he started to pop up, averaging 11, 12 yards a catch and making some big plays for the Houston Texans. I think the Houston Texans now are perhaps better than they were when they played the Denver Broncos. Let's call this the Miami Notre Dame effect. Right? You could still give the Broncos the nod because of head-to-head, and I'm giving you license to believe that the Broncos would have won that game even if C.J. Stroud would have played, because I believe that to be the case. But you can put the Broncos above the Houston Texans. That's fine. But I think you have to acknowledge, and people are, I think, starting to acknowledge this, that the Houston Texans in just the last 4 or 5 weeks have gotten better, have changed the perception about them. But leading up into that, they were certainly the first part of the season wildly underachieving. They had started to kind of look more like the Texans team we expected to see leading into the Broncos game, but there was a fair amount of skepticism because of the teams that they beat. Where have you heard that before? Like, this team looks good, but are they playing against the best that the NFL has to offer? So the Texans-Broncos game comes along. It plays out very much the same way that all of these Broncos wins play out. Texans lose C.J. Stroud. I still believe that the Broncos would have won that game. And maybe for a different reason, because of the injury to C.J. Stroud, it's like, okay, the Houston Texans are done now. Well, they get Stroud back, and they start stacking up wins. And now with the demise of the Indianapolis Colts, at least the believed demise of the Indianapolis Colts, here they are, holding on to the 7th spot, just a game behind Jacksonville. And check the schedule. Houston's going to have their shot to win this division. They got a great chance to win this division. And I think I would still, I mean, you always want to see how all these games play out. It's like what I've said about the perception of the Broncos. I really don't think, unless they run roughshod over their next 4 opponents, I don't believe that a lot of people are going to change their mind about the Denver Broncos or to open up, unless they look terrible for all 4 of these games or they look like world beaters for all 4 of these games. I don't know that anybody's going to change their mind. The way you feel about the Broncos, I think it's going to hold until the end of the season. In reserving the right to change my mind, I think at this moment in time, I don't think that the Houston Texans change my mind to the point where I would put them above the Denver Broncos going into the postseason. But there's a decent chance these two teams are going to meet. Right? Even if you take the playoff picture right now, depending on how you feel about New England, the Broncos could come out of their bye week and be facing the Houston Texans as the lowest remaining seed. If the Broncos slip from the top spot, but Houston remains where they are, and the way that that could happen is the Broncos losing in 2 weeks to Jacksonville, that could be your first-round matchup, Houston coming to Denver. Or you look in the future of two teams that you kind of believe in potentially meeting along the way. I think that there is a very good chance that at some point in these playoffs, we see Houston against Denver. And we'll put my theory to the test here. I think I would still have the Broncos above the Texans. I think I would still have more confidence in the Broncos. And I think more likely than not, any matchup that would occur in the postseason between Denver and Houston would be held in Denver. But it would look a lot different. It would feel a lot different than the last meeting, and it's not just because of CJ Stroud. I think if you watch this Houston team, they're getting better, and they may be getting better at the right time. So we'll see how much more they ascend and what the AFC looks like. That changes on a week-to-week basis. But Houston is certainly on everyone's radar once again, and are they going in the direction of being the team that no one wants to play because of the improvements they've made in just the last month? Take your thoughts. How you feel about Houston vis-a-vis a matchup with the Denver Broncos? 719-24-7, 13-13. More Drive Time Sports after this. It's the most wonderful time of the year, and we want to make it even better with $1,000 towards your winter wish list. You can use it for holiday shopping, travel, lights, or to just treat yourself. Enter this national contest at extrasports1300.com for a chance to fulfill your winter wish list. Sponsored by Level Up Falcon Weight Loss Hormone Therapy and IVs. Level up your health. Let's get to the text line here. A few different topics on the table. This from the 571. I don't think the Colts are above the Jaguars now, LOL. They are not. If I were, well, the Colts aren't even in the playoffs at the current moment in time. But I did before the Daniel Jones injury, and this is before I found out he broke his leg and was playing with it. You know, credit to him for doing that, man. But I put out my confidence rankings before I found out that piece of news, and then he did his Achilles. But yeah, my general my feeling about the Jaguars is, can I pick another team? And I've been a Trevor Lawrence backer. I've been waiting for this guy to pop. And look, Jacksonville, you'll see it in a couple of weeks when they play the Denver Broncos. There's a lot good going on with Jacksonville. Sometimes you get burned by a team, or a team has a reputation. Chargers would be another team kind of in this mix where you're just like, nope, not going to. Like, I can acknowledge there's some good things going on and they're a good team, but yeah, I'm not putting all my eggs into that basket. So it was the Colts and now it's the Texans. Best team in the AFC South to me. And the best part is you're going to find it out on the field because those two teams play twice down the stretch here. So we won't be able to say, barring a significant injury, that the team that wins the AFC South didn't deserve it, at least between the Texans and the Jaguars. I know the Colts will have an alternative set of events to tell on why maybe they didn't win it. But yeah, right now if I were ranking the entire AFC in terms of my confidence, I would definitely not have the Indianapolis Colts at this moment above the Jacksonville Jaguars. More on their quarterback situation coming up at the top of the hour. Brett comes in and says, after the Chiefs and Andy Reid agreed to a buyout and mutually part ways, do you think that opens the door for Mike Tomlin? He would fit in well in Kansas City. I think we both agree. I mean, Mike Tomlin's a good coach, but I would not make that. I don't want Andy Reid fired. I just want Andy Reid to make good, sound decisions based on the team that has presented itself to him over 12 weeks of this season and go, yeah, I'm not going to go for it on this fourth down. I think he let down Mahomes, and he admitted as much that he let the team down with that decision. A game that was in the balance, and you just gave it to the Houston Texans, and it wasn't unpredictable that the Chiefs weren't going to make that fourth down. I do not want Andy Reid to be gone. I think one player that needs to go ahead and go is Travis Kelce. And I think for the betterment of the Chiefs moving forward, I think finding a trade partner for Chris Jones would be in their best interest. They're going to have to do something of significance to get this thing back. Maybe it's just one or the other. But as we cut up the blame pie here, Patrick Mahomes gets the very, very least of it. His general manager, his coach, his all-time great prolific tight end and his supposed number one receiver all have greatly let him down this season and even before this season, especially when it comes to the way the Chiefs front office has operated. I don't put a lot of this on Patrick Mahomes. But I know everyone's happier because of it, and that's fine. That's fine. I kind of not at the expense of my team necessarily, but I do very much enjoy the chaos that has engulfed this NFL season. This from the 719. What is your take on Shedeur Sanders leading his team on an 80-yard scoring drive and then sitting him out, Stefanski sitting him out for the 2-point conversion, not just once, but twice? You want to talk about, I said Andy Reid going for it on that fourth down against the Texans on Sunday night was unconscionable. Taking Shedeur Sanders out on that 2-point conversion is unconscionable. And Kevin Stefanski is never, ever beating the allegations that he hates Shedeur Sanders. I don't believe that he does. But I am saying Kevin Stefanski has done nothing to push back on those rumors and that feeling. And doing something when Shedeur Sanders was terrific on Sunday. And in that moment, taking him out, like, come on, dude. I know you like the play, but come on. And you know what I think this is, though? And I don't know if Stefanski is going to keep that job. But I think this is a clear signal that Stefanski does not see a future with Shedeur Sanders. I think at least you can say that. I mean, all of this additional stuff about not preparing him and wanting him to fail, I don't believe that stuff. That's nonsense. That's first take nonsense. But I don't believe that Kevin Stefanski loves Shedeur Sanders. I don't think he believes he has a future with Shedeur Sanders as his franchise quarterback. And in a lost season, the best thing you can do is put Shedeur Sanders in every possible situation you can to develop him further to be the quarterback of your future. I think that is what is abundantly clear, is that if Kevin Stefanski has any say over the Browns quarterback situation moving forward, his druthers would not be to have Shedeur Sanders as his quarterback. For whatever reason, we don't have to go down a very nefarious path here. There are coaches that, Sean Payton hated Russell Wilson with every fiber of his being, and we all understand why. We can look at Kevin Stefanski not liking Shedeur Sanders, and I don't know that I agree with it, but I don't have to take it to a ridiculous place to explain it. Not his type of quarterback. Maybe holds on to the ball too long. Right? That was Sean Payton's big deal with Russell Wilson. So for whatever reason, Kevin Stefanski doesn't love Shedeur Sanders, the quarterback. And if he did love Shedeur Sanders, the quarterback, he would have had him out there on the most important play of the game on that 2-point conversion. Because it not only would show a level of faith in Shedeur right now, but it would also be an investment in the future. I'm going to put the game in your hands and see what you do. The Browns have nothing better to do than to either develop Shedeur Sanders or tank for the best draft pick they could possibly get. There is literally nothing else that can come of this Browns season that can be construed as positive. And I'm not saying Kevin Stefanski was trying to tank, But clearly he is not invested in the future of Shedeur Sanders. He does not want him to be his quarterback of the future. And that should not be breaking news, but Sunday was, to me, another sign of Kevin Stefanski's lack of belief in Shedeur Sanders. I don't think he's torpedoed Shedeur's chances. I even said, and I'm higher on Shedeur than a lot of people are, not than everybody is. There is a corner of the internet that I will never even come close to in terms of the belief in Shedeur Sanders. But I would say I am above average when it comes to my belief level in Shedeur Sanders. I didn't think that he should be starting any earlier than pretty much he is. But now you see it, right? Now you see that there's something there. And I would think a smart organization would say, let's lean into it. We got nothing better to do. Let's lean into it. And at the end of this, if we decide that Shedeur Sanders isn't our guy, we're going to probably have a pretty good draft pick. But that's in April. Why you don't have Shedeur Sanders on the field in that game at that moment in the game is just beyond me. But at the same time, I know the reason. It's just that Stefanski pays no mind to Shedeur Sanders' long-term success and just wants to do whatever he can to win a football game. And the irony in all of this, and I'm not plugged into the inner workings of the Cleveland Browns, but what I believe the irony of the whole situation is that maybe the best path for Kevin Stefanski to keep his job going into next season is to be able to show that he can bring out the best in Shedeur Sanders. Which, let's give him a little bit of credit for what Shedeur did on Sunday. But usually a way to insulate yourself and to keep your job is to tie yourself to a young quarterback. But clearly Kevin Stefanski does not want to do that. Maybe the Browns decide to bring in a coach who does believe in Shedeur. But that's crazy. But I don't know. If you're a Browns fan, you probably say at this point, nothing surprises you about your football team. But I think overall, sure looks like there is something with Shedeur. I'm not saying he's better than the top quarterback in this year's draft. But the notion that he fell to the 5th round because of a lack of talent and had zero future as a quarterback in this league, that was always nonsense. I don't necessarily agree with his fashion choices. I don't know if you saw that video, but I think there's something there with Shedeur, and I think Sunday showed that there is. And then at the most important juncture of the game, Kevin Stefanski was like, we're good here. I'm going to do some whatever BS that was. 719-24-7. 1313 Brett says maybe the Browns will bring in Andy Reid. Andy Reid would be very good for Shedeur Sanders. I gotta admit that. I'm not trying to. I know you are, Brett. I'm not trying to strip the Chiefs down to the studs and get rid of everybody I don't think that's necessary. Andy Reid and Mahomes can stay. McDuffie, Karlaftis. There are a few other guys that can stay, but some people need to go. And I think there's a roadmap with what the Warriors did in the NBA a few years ago. But they're done. They were done before, but now I will proclaim them done. 11% chance after the Chargers win last night for the Chiefs to make the postseason. Not great. 719-24-7-1313. The three stories that are driving the show coming up next. Hello there, hour 3 on this Tuesday. Glad to have you, whether you're listening to the show on air, online, or through the app, or whether you are watching the show on YouTube, X, Facebook, or Instagram at XTRA Sports 1300. Good conversation today. Want to keep it going? You could drop a comment on any of those social media platforms I just mentioned, or you could call or text into the show at 719 247 1313. Tuesdays around here quickly becoming hockey night. Last couple of weeks, we've had a Frank Serratori show followed by Avs hockey, and we have that tonight. I have some thoughts on the Avs, some significant news in terms of a couple of injured players. We'll get to that in a little bit as they take on the Preds this evening. But in the meantime, here are the 3 stories that are driving this show. All right, let's start with this for story number 1.
Murray's got it. Murray's had the hot hand. Here he goes again. Score! Foul!
Altitude Television on the call. That was just one of Jamal Murray's many buckets Sunday against the Charlotte Hornets, and scoring more than 20 points in a quarter. Capped off a pretty good week for Jamal. So good, in fact, that he has been named the Western Conference Player of the Week, something that I have never said about Jamal Murray, and it is a significant, I don't want to say benchmark because he doesn't need this to become an all-star, but it's an indicator of Jamal Murray playing at an all-star level. Last week he averaged 30 points, 7.5 assists. He's been really good, but he's been this way, maybe not 30 points a game, good, but he's been at an all-star level this whole season. And this week was the best of the week. So I guess the way I would put it is, if you think that Jamal Murray is slowing down, that maybe the pace he set at the beginning of the year is not sustainable. He just had the best week that he's had in a season that has arguably started the best of any Jamal Murray season. And it's just even more so fortifying his case to be an all-star. And the way I look at it right now, you have 3 players for 2 spots. It is Ant, Devin Booker, and Jamal Murray. That will be decided by the coaches and players in the NBA. But I think that's right now what it's going to come down to see if Jamal Murray will make his first all-star appearance. I would give him the edge right now over Anthony Edwards, actually. Not that Edwards is undeserving. I just think Jamal Murray is more deserving than Anthony Edwards at this point. But he's certainly in that conversation. And the bigger picture, the more important thing, maybe not in the immediate future, but longer term, is the fact that Jamal Murray is playing at an all-star level, and it is not a coincidence that the Denver Nuggets right now have the best start to a season that they have ever had. That's where they're at right now. And you could point to a lot of different things on why, but make sure one of the first places you point to, Jamal Murray and the way he's playing. The depth that they've acquired is great. The way that Nikola Jokic is playing is phenomenal. Jamal Murray is the biggest catalyst to this franchise best start that the Nuggets are off to. And with he and Jokic playing at the level they're at now, I don't think there's any real discussion on who is the biggest threat to OKC. It's Denver. And Jamal Murray is a big reason why. Western Conference Player of the Week. Here is story number 2.
Again, Pascal motion from right to left. Rivers sets up, throws left side to Zach Pascal at the 5-yard line, looking for the pylon, and he's in! Zach Pascal with his second receiving score today, and it gives the Colts the lead, 26-20, touchdown, I-N-D-Y, Zach Pascal!
ESPN 1070 The Fan. Colts radio on the call, an oldie but a goodie. Why? Because Phillip Rivers is back. At 44 years old, after 5 years away from the NFL, Phillip Rivers is back with the Indianapolis Colts. And all signs point to Phillip Rivers being the quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts in the final month of the season. We'll see if he plays this Sunday, but they brought him in, I think, to play. And in a season that has been wild, that has been chaotic, that has been unpredictable, why not throw this into the mix? Phillip Rivers, high school football coach, grandfather, back in the NFL. I hope it works. I do. And it doesn't have to work necessarily to the Colts, winning a Super Bowl or anything like that. I just want it to work. I want Phillip Rivers to play well. Because what a story it would be. Not him stepping on the field is a story. Him stepping out on the field and leading the Colts to wins is an even bigger story and a better story. And I wonder what this third act, if the Chargers were the first act, Colts the first go round were his second act, and now this is this short third act. I wonder if this does anything to sway Hall of Fame voters. If Phillip Rivers comes in, leads the Colts to the postseason, let's just start there. Let's not get too crazy with what the Colts can accomplish. We know that theoretically, if they're in the postseason, what they have a chance for. But let's just say a season that is teetering, a season that is going down the drain, is saved by 44-year-old high school football coach and grandfather Phillip Rivers after 5 years away from the NFL. Is that not something that could at least push a voter who is on the fence onto the side of putting Phillip Rivers into Canton? I think it is. I think it would be a story so remarkable that if you were entertaining even the possibility of voting for Phillip Rivers, don't you have to vote for him now? I think you do. And I wonder if this Hall of Fame talk is anywhere in Phillip Rivers' mind. Right? I got to imagine when you are this close to having your name put up for vote, that you don't think at all about whether you did enough to get in, and an opportunity presents itself to maybe further fortify your Hall of Fame case. I don't think it's the prevailing reason on why Phillip Rivers came back. I don't. But to say it's nowhere in his mind, I think it has to be. He and Eli Manning are very, at best, borderline Hall of Famers. I wouldn't put Eli in And I think Eli has a stronger case than Phillip Rivers. So, and I'm not even saying that this could change my perception of Phillip Rivers and if I had a vote. But I know from Eli Manning that there are plenty of people that are going to vote for Eli Manning who already have, and he will probably get enough votes to get into the Hall of Fame. This is not about my theoretical vote. This is about the actual votes. And I think there are people who are willing to be talked into Phillip Rivers being a Hall of Famer. And I think this could do the talking. And I think that it's part of Phillip Rivers' decision-making. 1%, 10%, I don't know. But again, his waiting period was up. You don't think his Hall of Fame candidacy came to his head at any point when the Colts reached out? And it's not a knock on anybody to want to be a Hall of Famer. This is not Phillip Rivers being selfish, because I don't think this is the driving force. I think it's okay that he has part of his mind on, hey, if I do this, I think I have a better chance to be immortalized into Canton. But before all of that, just the fascination level with the tail end of this NFL season that was already infinitely interesting has gotten even more so. Because I cannot wait to see what Phillip Rivers does for the Indianapolis Colts down the stretch here. Let's go to story number 3. Here is the athletic director of Notre Dame still talking about the college football playoff and the ACC.
We felt this was different, and it raised a lot of eyebrows. And, you know, we made our feelings known that we didn't particularly understand this. And it just kind of puzzled us that a conference that's home to over 600 of our student athletes walking around this campus today, I guess, chose to go down that road.
So I think in the wake of Notre Dame being snubbed, and yes, they were snubbed, they had every reason to feel hard done by the playoff committee. They should be in the college football playoff. But I think this is quickly morphing into not so much did Notre Dame deserve to get in, it's what's Notre Dame going to do now? And on two fronts. One, does this clear message to me being sent by college football, Notre Dame, get into a conference, stop feeling like you're better than everyone else, and get in a conference and compete for one of these college football playoff spots? I think at least one person in that room is trying to send that message. Does Notre Dame go that route? And then there's also a conversation about every other Notre Dame sport that resides in the ACC. Is Notre Dame going to bolt and take away their brand from the Atlantic Coast Conference? I think it's a real possibility right now. And what the Notre Dame athletic director is referring to there are these two tweets that were sent out by the official ACC account that put up Miami versus Notre Dame to make the case that Miami should be in. Two separate tweets where they were using Notre Dame as the undeserving team and Miami as the deserving one. Again, this falls under like the college football, the tantrum they threw about the college football playoff. I understand the emotion. I agree with Notre Dame's athletic director. The ACC should not, even though Notre Dame is not a member in football, the ACC should exhaust every other avenue to find a different team to try and prop up Miami with. Notre Dame is right in feeling like this was not something that the ACC should have done. But once again, like the complaining about the college football playoff, this is stuff that you probably ought to keep in-house. This tour that has come off very woe is me, feel bad for us, that's landing on deaf ears. But I do understand where Notre Dame is coming from. And I know they're not a member in football, but the ACC should have thought better of this. And in a moment where Notre Dame gets, maybe the ACC, whoever runs their account, didn't think it was possible that Notre Dame was going to be left out. Maybe this is an unintended consequence. They're like, well, Notre Dame's going to get in, so we'll put Miami on the shoulders of Notre Dame. They'll both get in, and we'll be happy. But you play a dangerous game here. Now Notre Dame is out, and now they're saying, remember when you publicly put out multiple Twitter posts telling people how undeserving we were so you could prop up Miami? And lumping it in with their complaints about the College Football Playoff Committee? Not good by the ACC. It's not. But is this something, again, that Notre Dame should be publicly chastising the ACC for? And in some way blaming the ACC for them getting left out of the College Football Playoff? No. I understand all the feels that Notre Dame has right now. I understand it. They were screwed. They should be in the College Football Playoff. And I don't think any team would like it if a partner conference in whatever capacity were using them as a way to bolster the case of somebody else while knocking them. I understand all of this. Does it have to be public? Do you have to go on a media tour to complain about this? No. And that's why I understand while Notre Dame has every right to feel like they were snubbed and has every right to be upset at the ACC, I also understand why no one wants to hear it from one of the institutions that has lived a charmed life in college athletics. 719-24/7, 1313. Take your thoughts on the three stories that are driving the show. Coming up next, the Avalanche get a couple of big early season players back tonight against Nashville. Tonight on Extra Sports 1300, you can hear the Avalanche take on the Nashville Predators. Our coverage from altitude begins at 7. Puck drop is going to be not 7:30. It will be after. It's one of those TNT games. But if you tune in around 7, you won't miss puck drop, whenever it might be. But the Avs are getting a couple of players back. We'll see if both of them are in the lineup. One thing that we do know is that Scott Wedgwood is back and will start. Mackenzie Blackwood had a spell here where he was the goalie each game. They couldn't do that alternating back and forth. And I thought Mackenzie Blackwood was getting his game back. I thought he played well against New York. I thought much of the issue against the Islanders before that was not on Mackenzie Blackwood. Couple of saves that he should probably make, but he was not the reason why they lost. New York, I thought he played well, and then against Philly, he played well. So I thought Mackenzie Blackwood was getting his game back, which I think is less necessary than it was previously, and that's what I'll say to complement what Scott Wedgwood has done. Every day I buy a little bit more into the idea that the Avs could win the cup with either guy in goal. I'm still saying that if the Avs are going to win, Mackenzie Blackwood is going to be in goal. But it's a long season. And Scott Wedgwood has certainly done a lot to, and I'm not down on Scott Wedgwood. I'm just of the mind that Mackenzie Blackwood is the better of the two goaltenders. And even though the Avs are this wagon and are dominant and are just blowing out teams, you know, when the playoffs roll around, they're not going to be able to do that as much. Goaltending is going to matter more. And the guy that I think has the ability to be what the Avs need in order to win Stanley Cup is Mackenzie Blackwood. But every day that Scott Wedgwood plays a hockey game, I say maybe they got two of these guys. But I thought Mackenzie Blackwood was getting his game back. And we'll see how Jared Bednar uses his two goalies moving forward here. But obviously makes all the sense in the world to get Scott Wedgwood back in goal. That was the longest stretch of consecutive games Mackenzie Blackwood has obviously played this season. So it makes sense Wedgwood's back in the lineup tonight, and we'll see how he fares in his first game back from injury against the Nashville Predators. Now, the other return for the Avs, be it tonight or moving forward, is Gavin Brindley, who right alongside Scott Wedgwood may be the biggest pleasant surprise of the Avs season. And before Brindley got hurt, he was being put on the top power play. He was being put on the top line. Like Jared Bednar was putting him in all of these different situations. And he has said that he feels like Gavin Brindley has top 6 potential. But then the injury happened. He's been activated off of injured reserve. We'll see if he's in the lineup tonight, but his return is imminent. And that really fun early season storyline can continue with Gavin Brindley. But you've seen this, the Avs getting back Valerian Nichushkin, and now they get back Wedgwood, and they'll get back Brindley. It's like for a team that has been, you wouldn't even know these guys were missing. Right? Like you knew because you're an Avs fan and you follow the team and you noticed that Valerian Nichushkin was not playing. You noticed Gavin Brindley wasn't playing and Scott Wedgwood. But in terms of the results, in terms of the play on the ice, they weren't missed that much. But they're getting him back, and it's reasonable to say the Avs will be better for having Nichushkin back. and we'll be better getting Brindley and Wedgwood back as well. So Avs and Preds coming up tonight. 7:30 is the scheduled puck drop, but definitely be ready for that game to start closer to 8. That's just the way it works with the national games on TNT. This one from the 719, not sure how you go back and forth talking between Blackwood and Wedgwood and still keeping it straight. Well, you know, when you're born with these gifts, no, it's in fact, what you don't see in the studio is I have two big signs that say Blackwood and Wedgwood, and with their faces and with no, it is difficult. I'll admit it is difficult to keep the two of them straight. Mackenzie Blackwood was the guy they got from the Sharks that was perceived to be even 1A or their number one goalie. Wedgwood was the guy they brought in and was the second guy. And then Mackenzie Blackwood was out with injury. So Scott Wedgwood filled in and was great. Collectively, real ones call them the woodshed. This lumberyard thing is, I don't know why that's where we went. Is it because of what? I don't even know why. I really don't. Woodshed is such a better nickname for this tandem than lumberyard. Like, I think lumberyard, I think that's the nickname for a baseball. Like a middle of the order on a baseball team. So I don't know where we got sideways on this. I don't know. I probably will blame the Avalanche. They probably push this. Woodshed's better. Right. Take them out to the woodshed. Is that not okay? Can we not say that? And I want to get into a whole conversation about what's political. But is that wrong? Can we not say that? But look, you said it. You typed it out. Didn't that sound so much cooler than say, take them to the lumberyard? I mean, that sounds like a 50 Cent song. Take you to the lumberyard. No, I'm not going down that road. Woodshed's better. That's my point. But now whatever you call them, and even if you confuse Wedgwood for Blackwood, don't worry, they're both playing. So as long as they're both playing, you can mix them up. Avs and Preds later this evening. Before that, the Frank Serratori show. Not the way that I think Air Force wanted to end the first part of their schedule, but you zoom out a little bit. They lost to Robert Morris on Saturday, but you zoom out and you see a team that swept Army, a team that won and tied against Canisius, came home, beat Robert Morris on Friday. This is a team that's trending in the right direction. And if you follow the Air Force hockey team, you know this as well as anybody. What you usually can bank on with Frank Serratori teams is that coming back after the holidays, they'll be at their best. And Frank even alluded to it in his post-game comments to Jay Ritchie as I was eavesdropping after I was done doing the broadcast for Altitude. And Frank did say, and I would expect him to say it again tonight and reiterate it in front of that crowd there at Ribbon Chop House, that he expects this team to be that proverbial team that no one wants to play come the spring, because that's what they usually are. They go on a run in the second half of the season and they find their game, and the heart of the way they play is they're tough to play against. And that identity comes through. It flourishes late in the season, and they usually do some damage in the Atlantic Hockey playoffs. It looks like this team is getting there sooner than the second half of the schedule. There were some signs of that over the last 3 weeks. And I think something that was incredibly telling to me, and I said this to open the broadcast on Altitude on Saturday, after the Falcons won on Friday, and it was a pretty resounding win. Like, the scoreboard says that Air Force kind of controlled it. You wouldn't know that even Air Force won, given what Frank Serratori was saying after the game. And what that signaled to me is, oh, the standard's up here now. Like, and this is a guy that's been coaching college hockey for 3 decades. Like, if there's any coach that can put his finger on the pulse of his team and understand what his team is, it's Frank Serratori. And because he was somewhat disappointed in the effort, not from a trying aspect, but just the execution level of his team, to say he was somewhat disappointed in that shows me that his expectation for this team is up here. That just winning games is not good enough, because he thinks they're capable more. Beating Robert Morris is what this weekend, with all due respect to Robert Morris, to me, it wasn't about Robert Morris. It's about Holy Cross. It's about RIT. It's about the teams at the top of this conference. It's about, did the Falcons play to a level that would have beaten those teams? Because that's what Frank Serratori thinks this team is capable of doing. So if you're a Falcon fan, that should be an encouraging thing, that the standard is much higher than even what was that, 4-1? And the goal that Robert Morris scored was at the very end of the game. I think it tells you what Frank Serratori thinks of this team, and I think you'll hear more of that coming up at the top of the hour with the Frank Serratori Show. 719-247-1313. Get some of your remaining texts in as well. Also, the Switchbacks making a couple moves over the last couple of days that I feel are significant ones. We'll get to those next. Don't forget to get entered into our winter wish list contest. What it means is if you win $1,000 to put towards whatever is on your winter wish list. Presents, lights, travel. It's up to you. It's your money. Go to extrasports1300.com to enter this national contest, and it is sponsored locally by Level Up Falcon. Weight loss, hormone therapy, and IVs. Level up your health. The Switchbacks have continue to make some moves. They took care of their in-house business. I just saw one of the players that left the club, Quincy Hewerman, is going to Louisville, and that speaks to where Quincy is at in his career and what the rest of the league thinks of him. That is arguably the best franchise that we have in this league, and they wanted to bring in Quincy Hewerman to bolster their attack. So I hate to see him go, but great for Quincy, and certainly shows how he's progressed in his career. But it was the moves that were made signaled to me that the Switchbacks under new head coach Alan McCann focused on goal prevention. Right? Bringing back Duke Lacroix, bringing back Aiden Rocha, bringing back Stevie Echeverria. One of the first moves they made outside the organization was to bring back Speedy Williams. And I thought some of the comments that the club shared with Hugh with the Gazette was very telling, that they lamented that he left in the first place. But what does Speedy Williams do? Right? What does Aiden Rocha do? What does Duke Lacroix help them do? It's very much with an eye on goal prevention, and then the piece de la resistance for Alan McCann, adding Orange County goalkeeper Colin Shuttler to the mix and putting him with Christian Herrera in that position group. That is a really big get. And Shuttler joined Orange County the year after they won the title when they eliminated the Switchbacks. Certainly, they've had their run-ins. In the playoffs last year, they got the better of Orange County by a score of 1-0. But this year, Colin Shuttler was third in the league in saves. Was top 10 in clean sheets. This is a goalkeeper that has a track record of being one of the better goalkeepers in the league. Still a younger guy, but the numbers he has put up the last couple of campaigns point to him being, I mean, this is a major acquisition for the Switchbacks and ties all of these other moves together. Now, I would expect it to be an open competition. I don't think this means that Christian Herrera is on the outside looking in. Quite the contrary. I know that organization, some of that same thinking is still there with Alan McCann. There's going to be playing time for both of them. And there will be a competition. But what that move does, whether you think that it will ultimately be Colin Shuttler as the number one goalkeeper or Christian Herrera next year, what it does is it stabilizes that position. And it's a position that needs to be stabilized. Right? We saw the Switchbacks make some short-term fixes at that position by bringing in Adam Beaudry. That was never going to last forever. And I don't know that until they brought in Beaudry that they felt like if things went sideways with Christian Herrera, that they had somebody they could consistently call upon. So no matter how this competition goes, and I'll just put it out there, I think that Colin Shuttler is going to be the number one goalkeeper in Colorado Springs. That's what I would expect to happen. But now you have a goalkeeper that has won a championship in this league at the ready to, one, push Shuttler. And if Shuttler doesn't perform at the level that the Switchbacks expect him to, you would have no problem going to Christian Herrera. And you have two guys that will constantly push each other in training, and you'll feel good about either option. You've won a title with Christian Herrera, and you went out and got Colin Shuttler. But this ties together all of these other internal and external moves that the Switchbacks have made to say the number one thing for Alan McCann right now is preventing goals. And you certainly saw this past year that there were some games that got out of hand quickly. There were some matches where, there was a stretch of, I felt like at least a month where it was just one goal at the exact wrong time that cost the Switchbacks points. You need to destabilize that position, and overall, you see the vision from Alan McCann that they got to allow fewer goals than they have previously. Even in the championship year, I don't know that they were thrilled with their ability to prevent goals. But it was better than it was this previous year, and now you bring in somebody who is among the best at the position. That's the most. Speedy Williams, obviously a significant addition, and people around here love that move because Speedy was a fan favorite around here. But this Colin Shuttler deal to me is not just the most significant move the Switchbacks have made in Alan McCann's, albeit short tenure. This might be one of the bigger additions to this club in recent years. That's how important that position was. So Colin Shuttler is in. Also a move made by the club today, bringing in defender Patrick Berner. He played last year at North Carolina, but has previously played overseas, and that was something Alan McCann brought up in his comments that the team released along with the news, that he has a wealth of experience overseas that the Switchbacks were looking for. And what stuck out to me was Alan McCann mentioning that he could help at a number of positions. That has also been a theme of this Switchbacks offseason. And it started with Alan McCann when he joined me the day he got the gig on this show, talking about, and it was Juan Tejada that he was talking about, but just the idea that he could play Juan Tejada at so many different positions, and the Switchbacks wouldn't be worse off for it. They could plug Juan Tejada into a number of positions, and this is another player like that. So you look, it gets kind of crowded on the back line, right? You have Matt Mahoney, you have Garvin Tusla back, Duke Lacroix, they actively brought back into the club. You have Isaiah Foster. But this is somebody that, as Alan McCann said, can help him in a number of different areas. But again, defender in the name, goal prevention. Eventually, the Switchbacks will need to pivot and will have to start to address the goal scoring aspect. I think they're going to need some help there. You lose Quincy Huerman. But right now, the focus is very clear in this. I think Alan McCann has done terrific job in concert with team president Brad Estes to bring in some guys that are certainly going to help them do that. So Colin Shuttler yesterday and Patrick Burner today. We have another vote in favor of Mackenzie Blackwood and Scott Wedgwood combined being the Woodshed, being the superior nickname to that tandem than Lumberyard. So there's another vote for that, although I don't see the alternate argument, and I still don't understand why we ever got so far off course when there was a fantastic nickname sitting right there to go in another direction. It's unfortunate. It may be the Boston game, the Islanders game, and dubbing Blackwood and Wedgwood the Lumberyard really the only three missteps of the Avalanche season. They haven't had a very rough go of it this year. Not many mistakes with that organization at this moment in time. But those are three: the Boston game, the New York Islanders game last week, and then this whole Lumberyard nonsense. But it's okay. There's no rule. I will continue to call them the Woodshed, as will you, and that's fine. We are allowed to do that. I think that's everything. Again, very much a hockey night on this station. Frank Serratori show coming up next. And then right after that, Altitude's coverage of the Avs and Preds. Scott Wedgwood is back in goal. We'll see about Gavin Brindley, but we know that Brindley is not far behind as he has been activated off of injured reserve for the Avs. And that game will be one of the primary topics of conversation tomorrow, which I hope you will join me for that. Appreciate your patronage. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Hopefully you will keep it here on Extra Sports 1300.